Good morning, everybody. My name's Harminder Matharu, Interim Director of Partnerships at the Youth Futures Foundation. Today we're going to be discussing some of the key impacts of the COVID-19 crisis has had on young people in terms of their employment prospects. We have a number of slides to get through, so they are there for your reference, but we'll be focusing on some key ones.
Hi everyone, my name's Darnell. I'm the Head of Strategy and Innovation at the Youth Futures Foundation. So I'll kick us off, tell you a little bit about who we are and our mission and our insights so far. So we're the Youth Futures Foundation, set up last year to improve the employment outcomes of young people, particularly who face disadvantage or discrimination in the labour market. We have an initial endowment of 90 million that will allow us to really hopefully deliver real and lasting change, champion what works and transform practice. This is our mission and vision, how we want the world to look like, and our role within this is about trying to address the root causes of youth unemployment in this country. So our work is built around 3 pillars. So simply, firstly, about supporting the sector, so supporting the young people that we're focused on and supporting the programmes that work with them, testing and understanding what they do and how it works, building their capacity to do it better. And then our role as an informer is about that process of testing and learning the programmes that work, commissioning research gaps and being able to spread and share practice, and playing it then as a convener, playing a leadership role in the sector, bringing employers to the table, influencing funding and commissioning and policy development. And we recognise that this is an issue that is both a supply and demand side issue. It's yes about whether young people have the right skills and opportunities to obtain the work that they want, but it's also about whether employers are in the right position and whether they're equipped to do so, as well as the wider structural issues that play out around this. So what is the problem that we're trying to solve, and why is it important in the first place? So I'll tell you a little bit about what we knew about this cohort of young people before the COVID-19 outbreak. So before the outbreak, over 1 in 10 young people aged 16 to 24 in England were neither earning nor learning. So they were classified as NEET. And we know that a significant proportion of them, over 400,000, were not actively looking for work. So they weren't claiming benefits and they weren't classified as unemployed. And we know that some young people are much more likely to fall out of employment, education and training than others. And we know there are significant drivers of that. So this graph demonstrates that for young people who are classified as NEET for more than a year, which has significant scarring effects for their long-term employment outcomes, they are much more likely disproportionately to have faced other barriers. So for instance, care experience young people are vastly overrepresented in that long-term NEET outcome. And we know overall that the enduring impacts for a young person, the scarring effects on their long-term outcomes are predominant from having any experience outside the labour market, particularly in terms of their lifetime earnings. We also know that geography plays a really significant factor here, but both between regions, these disparities play out in terms of the local labour market and youth employment, but also really localised within regions, there are significant disparities too. We know that ethnicity and race is a predominant factor for young people who are outside of employment, education and training. And the race disparity audit of 2017 has revealed quite startling disparities here. And they vary across areas, both in terms of size and the cause, and between groups. We know that the impacts of differences in socioeconomic backgrounds will also play a really different, have a different factor here in terms of how these disparities play out. So as I said before, this is a demand and supply side issue. It's a systemic problem. It's yes about the individual barriers that young people may have, but also about the systemic structural problems around them that might make it harder for them to access fulfilling and sustainable work.
So what do we know so far about the impact of COVID-19 on youth employment? Our insights and the surveys that we've been conducting tell us that young people are more at risk of losing work, with 2.5 times more likely to be working in sectors that have been shut down. They are much less likely to be able to work from home, with around a quarter having been furloughed and a further 9% have lost their jobs altogether. Those that are missing out on education and training, 2 in 5 are not engaged with teachers at the moment, with the most disadvantaged least likely to engage with any remote learning at all. And we know that the rate of apprenticeship starts are much lower compared to this time last year. The figure there of 640,000 young people unemployed is the increase that we're likely to see, and we feel that that could be much bigger as well. Young people claiming unemployment benefit has more than doubled in the past 2 months, and we know young people are much less likely to claim than other age groups. So during lockdown, the disadvantage factor has magnified. Pre-COVID, the disparities that existed then will still exist and are likely to widen. We must do everything we can to avoid a lost generation of young people. For example, how do we move quickly to engage those that are not digitally engaged? Our survey highlighted some significant figures, these being higher for young people who have other barriers. So, for example, 5.6% of all young people only have access to the internet via their mobile phone. When looked at differently, those young people who have experience of the care system, it's a quarter, 1 in 4 have access via a phone. Those not in education, training or employment was over 15%. And for those eligible for free school meals with an offending record or a long-term health condition, it was over 10% only have access via a mobile phone. Moving on, so what do we do? What do we know works? Our research tells us that there are various factors that actually can support initiatives and be successful. So our rapid evidence assessment, which we commissioned, highlighted that accurate identification and trying to identify at-risk young people as early as possible through tracking systems and accurately understanding individual needs in order to personalise support packages is very effective. Effective engagement through the use of various magnets such as cultural magnets, music, sports or arts, and financial magnets such as cash vouchers, or ensuring that provision looks different to compulsory education to encourage interest and take up from young people. A trusted advisor is critical, as young people need to believe support could make difference to them achieving their personal goals and overcoming their contextual, personal and situational barriers. And a consistent advisor can help sustain engagement and develop reflection and action cycles, helping to keep momentum towards the end goal. And equally important, employer-focused strategies. So, for example, providing wage subsidies and an intermediate labour market has worked well in the past and are likely to be very important to recovery. So where do we go from here? Quite simply, ensuring no young person is left behind. The Youth Employment Group, of which Movement to Work are members, have come together and made various asks of government and its agencies. There are also some practical actions for employers and providers to consider. So, and no doubt are already considering. Employers, for example, to think about revising recruitment strategies and relaxing entry criteria to be more inclusive of those young people. Reaching the digitally excluded at speed and prioritising and flexing skills funding to meet immediate needs. So we need to work together to ensure that no young person is left behind. The road to recovery. We recognise that many organisations, be it employers, providers and other organisations, have been in difficult situations, with over 1 million employers having used the job retention scheme to furlough staff, and in the region of 745,000 have received the bounce back loans. So with this support, we look to you to work together to support young people back into the labour market as the economy improves, and especially not overlooking those young people who were disadvantaged or out of work before the outbreak. So We'd like to end with thanking you for listening. We will be working over the coming weeks to develop our partner engagement strategy, and we will be in touch, as we're very keen to hear from both employers and providers and any other organisations involved in this agenda. Thank you very much for listening.